Hey guys, we're going to talk about verb tenses today. Sorry, no fun green screen stuff. But we're going to talk about the principal parts, simple tenses, and perfect tenses today. Now, for now, we're talking about regular verbs. That means the normal, the usual ones. And the good thing about those is once you understand the base form, you can methodically figure out every other one. It's only when you get to the irregular ones that there aren't really rules for how they change. So for what we do today, though, there will be a decent amount of rules that should be able to guide you to help figure out the different tenses. So when we talk about tense, we say, what is tense? Well, it shows the time of a verb. Since verb is an action, it could take place in different times. So you use the different tenses to express whether it happened in the past, it's kind of happened now, or it frequently happens, or it happens in the future. So by understanding the tense, you know when a particular action occurred. Here's some examples. And this is what we call the simple tense. We'll spend a little bit more time on it in a moment. But the three simple tenses are past, that means it happened in the past, present, that means it's kind of happening now, and then future. So past, it says, last week the Pacers practiced every day. Our verb is practiced, and the ed that's there lets us know it happened in the past. Now they practice on off days. Okay? Does that mean they're doing it right now? No. But what the present tense often means is that they do it frequently, or they're in the middle of doing it, or something they're likely to do. So when you read that, it says, now they practice on off days. That's the state they're in right now. Does that mean they're actually practicing? No, it doesn't now. But what it does mean is that that is what they are in the middle of. That's their current situation. Future tense, if you know the word future, you know when that one would happen. It says, in the off season, they will practice less frequently. Okay? Will is that key word that lets us know about that. Okay? Now, the principal parts. Any kind of verb tense you need, you have to understand the principal parts. Once you understand those, you can use those to build anything else. The parts are base form, present, which we just kind of talked about, base form, present participle, past, and past participle. Base form is often called the present form anyway. But it's called a base because that's what you build off of. They follow a pattern, and when you get to the base form, it's the verb in its natural state. Oftentimes the present. Okay, it doesn't have the suffixes like ing or ed, and that should be no suffixes instead of now. It's my typo. I'll have to fix that. Also, you can add to that base. And that's how you create those parts. For example, you have jump, walk, kick, smile. That would also be an example of your present tense. But in order to create any other tense, you have to add things to those words, and that's how you can do that. So, how do we add to our base to get a present participle? And when do you use it? You use it to express an action that is occurring right now. We talked about the present tense possibly meaning it happens frequently. If it's actually happening right now, that's when you use the present participle. Okay? To do that, you take your base, like you see down there, kick, and all you have to do is add ing to it. Okay? And that's it. Now, that's your participle form, but whenever you'd actually use that in a sentence, you need, as you see from the bullet there, a present form of be. So here's an example. The athlete is kicking the ball. That means it's happening right now. Our participle form of that verb kick is kicking. But in order to make it look like it's happening right now, we need the helping verb is. Okay? Is kicking. Now sometimes you might see are kicking because of the different subject, but you have to have the ing and then that present form of be, which would be is or are. Okay? Now, so we've got present participle. Now, how do we take that base form and go to the past? Well, past, I think you know when that happened. It happened in the past. And basically, all you do is add ed or d to the base form. So take, for example, kick. All you do is add ed to that. Okay? Now, past participle, on the other hand, you take that time when you would use it to refer to an action that began in the past. Okay? So past participle, that's when you use it when it began in the past. We're talking about something that happened in the past, but it still could be going on. We'll talk more about the perfect tenses, but the past participle is when you do the perfect tense, and we'll talk about those instances later. Okay, in order to form that, you use a form of the helping verb have. Okay, so you use the same past tense that you already figured out, and you add has or have to it. Now you might be wondering, when do I use has and when do I use have? It depends on the subject that you have. If I say Mr. Fincham, I would say Mr. Fincham has jumped. But if it's plural, Mr. Fincham and Noah, we'd say have jumped. Okay? And just to make sure we're clear, you take your base form, add ed for past, and then to make it past participle, you just add has or have before that verb. Now, here are some rules that you just kind of need to know. Most of them are relatively simple. For one-syllable words ending with a single consonant, you double the final consonant before adding ing or ed. Take a look at the examples. Chop becomes chopping and chopped. You double your p on both instances. Now, if they don't go by these rules, all you have to do is add ed or ing. For verbs ending with e, you drop that e first. Take a look and you see type becomes typing, you drop the e, and type, you just add a d for that one. Okay? And then for verbs ending in a consonant and a y, change your y to an I before adding ed. So cry, crying is normal, you add ing, but cry, take the y and it's ied as cried. Okay? And those are things that I know you guys know because you've grown up immersed in the English language, but those are just some rules that you should follow. Now, here are those simple tenses we talked about. And here's a little chart. It's got the tense, the use, and the example. Now, you could also find this chart in your book if you'd like. But if you look at the present form, it's walk or walks. Okay, that's why they call walk the base, because you can also add an S and it's still present. Okay, past would be walked. Future will walk. And it shows you examples there. I'll leave this slide open for just a moment so you can take a look about it. But present happens for things that are existing now, or things you do frequently. Repeated actions is what that says. Past, well guys, that happened when in the past. Future, guess what? It hasn't happened yet. And then if you look on the far right column, the example, you see examples for each one for a singular and plural subject. I'll leave a couple more seconds on that. Now, here are the perfect tenses, which seem to be kind of the most confusing, but just like the others, you use a pretty simple formula to figure them out. And when we get to the Moby video in a moment, I think you'll have a good opportunity to do that. So, perfect tenses. Those are used when the verbs refer to and relate to different time periods and events. So if you're talking about something that maybe started in the past or will start in the future and you're relating to that event, that's called the perfect tense. Okay? And sometimes it gets confusing, but you naturally do that when you speak. Now we're learning how some of the ways that you talk are actually classified. So here's the present perfect. Okay? That's something that took place in the past and may still be going on. Okay? So if I started my homework, okay, a little bit ago, but I'm still working on it, I would end up using the present perfect tense. I have started my homework 3 hours ago, or I'd started my homework 3 hours ago. Sorry, I wouldn't use had. It would be have or has. I have started my homework, but guess what? I could still be working on it. Hopefully that's not the case by the time you watch this. Past perfect, that's something that took place before something else in my past. And that's when you use had. We'll talk about that in a second. But if it was homework, you could say, I had started my homework before I ate dinner. Okay? They both happened in the past, but had means you did something before something else that already happened in the past. Now, future perfect, that means that if there's something in the future, you're relating to another thing in the future, and it's going to happen before that. Okay? Like, I'm going to do my homework before I go to bed. I will have done my homework before I go to bed. Okay? That would be an example of that. So those are when you use them, and we can take a look at a couple other things now. Here are some examples. Talking about the present. Okay? Present perfect. The Pacers have practiced every day this week. Okay? If you look at this, for that tense, all you really have is take your past tense, and every single perfect tense, you start with your past tense verb, okay? And you say, have practiced. As you notice, that's the same as our participle from before, okay? Our past participle. They have practiced every day this week, okay? And guess what? That could have started in the past, and by now it's Tuesday, so maybe that's happened several other times. Still going on. Past perfect. And speaking of the past, the way I see it, the past can hurt, but you can either run from it or learn from it. It's up to you. Okay, side note, sorry about that. The Pacers had practiced before the road trip. Okay, now, that means it happened before something else. So they had a road trip maybe last week. Before that, they practiced. That's an example of past perfect. Now, future perfect, the Pacers will have practiced 100 times before the All-Star break. All-Star break has not happened yet, but them practicing, will happen before that. That's future perfect. Now, take a look at past perfect. The only thing that changes from present to past is your form of have. It becomes had because it's past. And then future, it's going to be will have. And so those are the real differences, as far as making them. Really, I think you guys should understand that pretty well. Let's just sum it up. Every verb has 4 principal parts. You got your base form, present participle. Okay? Remember, your base form is just how you normally would see the word with no endings on it. Present participle. Typically, you add ing, and then in a sentence you'd see is, like is running. Past, a lot of times you're adding d or ed, and that means it happened in the past. There are irregular verbs, we'll talk about those tomorrow. And then past participle, which we just talked about, which a lot of times you're going to have has or have, and then the past tense form, jumped, has jumped, have jumped. Okay, and those tenses that we just talked about, they explain the different times. Now, if you understand those principal parts, you can use those to get any other tense that we've talked about today. Just as one more thing, this has kind of working with you. Sorry about that. Just kind of a few minutes working with you, just so you can see how you take, or just with the simple tenses that we talked about, because it's a little bit easier. Okay. For example, you take expect, plan, stop, hurry, and tumble, and in order to make those present, you really leave them as they are. The only thing that can also be there is an S on each one, except for hurry. That would be IES, and tumbles, you could add an S. Guess what? Those would be an example of present tense. Now, in order to make them past tense, that's right, you guessed it, you need ED. And in this instance, because of our rules that we talked about, you need NED, PED, take out the I and you go IED, okay? And then tumbled, you just add a D. Guess what? We have our past tense. Alright? Now, I probably should have done that last for the sake of what I'll show you in a minute, but I'll just write it again. We would say add will expect, and then guess what? Will plan, will stop, will hurry, and will tumble. Those express things that are going to happen, which would be, yes, you got it, your future tense. Now, we talked about present already. So let's talk about present participle. Well, in order to have them in a sentence, we need is or are. I'm going to go with is. It's shorter to write for each one. It depends on your subject, though. Plural would be are. They are, he is, right? And then guess what? All you usually add for your present participle is ing. In this instance, ning, ping, right? Because of our rule, we have a single consonant there. We have to double it. Oh, hurry. Oh, guess what? Because it's a Y, you don't change anything. And then tumble, we have to drop our E and add ing. So, present participle. I already showed you the past, okay? But because we need it for past participle, I'll go ahead and write what I had already written down. We've got expected, we've got planned, we've got stopped, make this into IED, hurried, and then we've got tumbled. Now, in order to make this past participle, all you have to do is add to it. And in order to do that, you have to add a form of your verb have. Now, it could be has depending on your subject, but I'll go with have for these. Have expected, have planned, have stopped, have hurried, have tumbled. You see how in order to do that you take your base, you make it past, you add your form of have or has. Pretty simple, right? Well, guess what? We also just did present perfect. Okay? Because present perfect is the same thing as past participle. Now, here's the awesome part about this. Right now, and I could have even made it easier, I don't have to change anything here in order to get my next one ready. All I have to do is this. For past, I make it had. 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 You're right, again, had and had. Now, the only thing different for future tense is going to be, once again, we'll change we will change what we put on there, and so I'll put will have, you guessed it, will have, will have. Guess what? I just told you how you can take your base, which are these people right here, and turn them into every other principal part and perfect tense. So hopefully that will help you with every assignment I give you. All right, have a good night.